You destroyed our lives. Get out. That's what my daughter-in-law screamed while my son stood behind her, silent. My granddaughter threw a sneaker at me. My grandson watched without blinking. No one helped. No one stopped them. So I packed one bag and walked out into the cold. A month later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Over 50 missed calls. One message. "Mom, please, it's about Ethan. He's missing." And that's when I realized they weren't calling to apologize. They were calling because their lie was about to unravel. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe, and please share with me and others. What's one life lesson everyone should hear before it's too late? Drop it in the comments below. Thanks. I don't remember what I was doing when it all started. Probably folding towels, like I always did around that time. But suddenly, everything exploded. "You destroyed our lives. You ruined us." That was Sarah, my son's wife, sharp and loud, yelling from the kitchen. Then Emily, their 22-year-old daughter, my granddaughter, screeched over her. "You had to open your damn mouth." And then Chloe, Sarah's younger sister, lounging in the living room like she owned the place. "Well, say something, Ellen. You proud of yourself?" I stepped into the hallway, still holding one of David's t-shirts, my son, the only child I ever raised, and saw them standing in a line like they'd rehearsed it. Sarah was in her silk robe and slippers, face red, clutching papers I didn't recognize. David stood behind her, arms crossed, mouth shut, like always when things got messy. He didn't defend me. He never did. "What did I do?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. My heart was pounding, but I stayed still. Emily laughed, sharp and mean. "Don't play dumb. You talked and now we're screwed." I looked at David. He looked away. Sarah stepped closer. "Everything we've built, gone, because you can't keep your mouth shut on a phone call." I genuinely didn't know what they meant. I hadn't said anything to anyone, not about them. I didn't gossip. I barely left the house. I kept to myself like they always wanted. "If you're going to yell at me, fine," I said, quieter than I felt. "But at least tell me what I'm being punished for." Chloe crossed her arms. "Oh, she wants an explanation now. She wants a little chat." Sarah shoved the papers in my face. "Do you even realize what you said about David's jobs to people who report that stuff?" My stomach dropped. I remembered the phone call from a week ago, doctor's office. The woman asked questions about household income. I'd mentioned David sometimes worked side gigs, even though he was on disability. I hadn't meant it as anything bad, just small talk. I didn't know it would. "No." David cut me off, finally speaking. "You didn't think. That's always been your problem." I took a step back. My fingers were going numb. Down the hall, Ethan, my 17-year-old grandson, Emily's younger brother, stood half in the shadows, earbuds in. He didn't say anything, didn't move, just watched. Emily grabbed a sneaker from the table and hurled it at the wall behind me. "You've done enough," she snapped. "Get out." Sarah nodded, like it was already decided. "You're not staying in this house another night." I walked slowly to my room. No one stopped me. I put the folded t-shirt in my bag, took only what I needed, a coat, my purse, my meds, left the rest. As I zipped the bag, I could hear them talking, planning, venting, celebrating. Chloe said something like, "Took long enough." I walked back down the hallway, past Ethan. He didn't move. I opened the front door. The air hit cold, but it didn't matter. I stepped outside. One bag, no car, no plan, and I still didn't fully understand what I'd ruined. A month earlier, the house in Willow Creek felt the same. Quiet, controlled, heavy, but nothing had detonated yet. I woke up every day around 6, not because anyone needed me to, but because that's what I'd done for 40 years. I'd make coffee, fold the towels Sarah left in the dryer overnight, and wipe down the counters before anyone stirred. No one asked me to, and no one thanked me. That was the rhythm. Ethan would pass through the kitchen around 7, never looking up from his phone. Emily never emerged before 10, usually complaining about a headache or a job she didn't want to go to. Sarah would glide in mid-morning, eyebrows already arched, checking her phone and saying she wished the house could be quieter in the mornings. I tried to be invisible. That was the rule, even if it was never said out loud. David worked nights sometimes not. I stopped asking about that years ago. There were stretches where he stayed home for weeks, claiming back pain or paperwork issues. All I knew was the tension between him and Sarah got worse every time money ran low. I didn't ask, because asking made me a problem. My room was technically the guest room, tucked in the back near the laundry machines. No window, just a vent that rattled at night. My things were stacked in plastic bins because the closet was full of Sarah's winter coats and Emily's extra shoes. I had one dresser drawer to myself. I didn't complain. I told myself they let me stay here. That was enough. Chloe started showing up more around that time. She didn't live there, but she might as well have. Always walking in without knocking. Always pouring herself coffee I bought. Always making little comments like, "Still hanging around, huh, Ellen?" Sarah never stopped her. David never noticed. Chloe had a way of making me feel like a squatter in my own son's house. She'd flip through mail on the counter like it was hers, or put her feet on the table while watching TV. Emily loved her. They were like sisters, more than Sarah and Chloe were. The house felt like a sorority I wasn't allowed to join. One morning, I was making toast when Chloe came in, wearing Sarah's robe like she owned the place. She poured coffee and leaned on the counter. "Hey, Ellen," she said, sweet as vinegar. "You talked to anyone at the clinic lately?" I looked up, surprised. "Just some insurance lady. Why?" She shrugged. "Just curious. They always ask nosy questions, don't they?" I nodded. "They asked about who lives here, income, the usual." She smiled too wide. "Hope you didn't say anything they could twist. Government's tricky like that." I frowned but let it go. I didn't think twice. That day, I went back to folding laundry, wiping counters, staying out of the way. But something about the way Chloe looked at me lingered. Like she knew something I didn't. Like she'd planted something and was waiting for it to grow. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where nothing feels urgent. I was in the kitchen folding napkins when my cell rang. A routine clinic follow-up call. I'd gone in for blood pressure and a refill. Nothing serious. The woman on the phone was polite, reading from a form, asking if my address in Willow Creek was still the same, who else lived in the home, whether anyone in the household contributed financially. I answered honestly, without thinking. "My son David owns the house," I said. "He's on disability, but he does small cash jobs here and there to help cover things." That was the truth. I didn't say it to hurt him. I didn't think it was a secret. I assumed it was common knowledge, something everyone did to get by. The woman didn't respond much, just said, "Mm-hmm," and moved to the next checkbox. The call lasted maybe 10 minutes. I hung up and went back to wiping the counter. I didn't notice Chloe at the kitchen island until she spoke. "They ask a lot of weird questions, don't they?" I looked over. She was sipping her coffee, smirking like she'd been waiting for me to notice her. "I didn't see you there," I said. "Didn't need to be seen," she replied, then added, "Hope you didn't say anything too spicy." I frowned. "Just the usual. Who lives here? What we all do. Nothing strange." She raised her eyebrows and said, "You know, the government doesn't play when it comes to income, right?" Then she slid off the stool and walked away, still grinning. Something in my gut twisted, but I ignored it. I went about the day like normal, thinking nothing of it. That night, David came home late. He barely looked at me. Sarah said nothing at all. Emily was out. Ethan was upstairs. The house felt heavier than usual. The next day, a thick white envelope arrived, addressed to David. He opened it silently at the table, skimmed the first page, then shoved it under a magazine without a word. Sarah looked at me once, flat and cold. You say anything on that call? She asked suddenly. I blinked. What call? Your doctor or whatever. They asked about who lives here, income stuff. I just told them the truth. What truth? Her voice sharpened. About David doing work sometimes. Just small side jobs. Why? Sarah stared at me, and something behind her eyes hardened. You know he's not supposed to report income while on disability, right? My mouth went dry. I didn't mean to get anyone in trouble. I was just answering questions. Chloe chimed in from the hallway. Oops, cat's out of the bag now, huh? I stood there, frozen. David was still silent, flipping the envelope closed like it was nothing. I didn't fully understand what I'd done, not yet. I only knew something had shifted. Within 48 hours, the entire atmosphere in the house changed. I woke up the next morning to Sarah on the phone, pacing down the hallway, her voice sharp enough to cut through walls. I don't care what the paperwork says. We were never notified. And now everything's frozen. How is that even legal? I stayed in my room. That's what I'd learned over the years. Stay quiet. Stay invisible. But the words still seeped through the drywall. Yes, he's on disability. No, I don't know why this is happening. No, I don't know who told them. Click. Dial tone. I waited another hour before walking to the kitchen. The TV was off. The air felt sucked out, like something had happened overnight. David sat at the table, still in the t-shirt he slept in, staring at a pile of mail. Sarah turned the moment I stepped into the room. Her eyes were bloodshot. You said too much, Ellen? She said at first. I opened my mouth, but she kept going. You told them about the side work. That's what did it. They flagged it. Now everything's paused. David's check, our benefits, the rent coverage, all of it. David still hadn't looked at me. I didn't know, I said quietly. It wasn't meant to hurt anyone. You think intentions matter when the money's gone? Sarah snapped. You told a system that doesn't care. Now they're digging. I looked at David. He didn't move. Say something, I whispered. He exhaled through his nose, not lifting his eyes. You should have known better. That was all he gave me. I backed out of the room slowly, my legs shaking, my mind spinning. I spent the rest of the day in my room, not eating, not moving, replaying every word from that call in my head. What exactly had I said? Had I used the word work? I couldn't remember. The next day, Chloe came over earlier than usual. She didn't knock. She never knocked. She strolled into the kitchen like she lived there and said loudly, So, I hear our house snitch caused a government scare. Emily, sitting at the counter with a bowl of cereal, laughed without looking up from her phone. She's a liability, Mom. Like, honestly, why is she even here? Sarah muttered something I couldn't hear, then followed with, She's lucky we even gave her a room. I waited a few minutes, then walked out like nothing was wrong. No one looked up. I passed them to get water, and I could feel their eyes avoiding me deliberately, performatively, like I was a ghost. Chloe sipped coffee and tilted her head. Maybe you're just getting forgetful, Ellen. Old brains do that. Can't always tell what's private and what's not. Emily giggled. Should get her one of those baby monitors. See what else she blurts out. My hands shook as I poured the water, but I didn't say a word. I knew now this wasn't confusion or anger. This was a setup, a shift, a punishment. They weren't just mad. They were preparing me for exile, and none of them, not even my son, planned to stop it. 3 days after the envelope, after the silence, after David's cold shoulders and Sarah's venom, I knew the damage was permanent. I kept waiting for someone to calm down, to acknowledge I didn't mean to cause harm, but it only got worse. The house turned into a stage, and I was the prop they performed around. I overheard Chloe on speakerphone saying things like, "Ellen's losing it, and she's becoming a problem," followed by a fake whisper, like she wanted me to hear. "And she's not even paying rent." That night, Sarah and Chloe announced a girls' night at the house, something they hadn't done in months. I stayed in my room, thinking they'd keep it low-key. I was wrong. The music wasn't loud, but the laughter was. The worst kind, fake, meant to carry through walls. I heard glasses clinking, high heels tapping across the floor, and the name Ellen tossed around like a bad joke. I tried to tune it out until I heard Emily's voice yell, "Wait, let me do the impression." Then a squeaky mock voice. "Well, the government asked me, so I told them everything about my hard-working son." Roaring laughter. Chloe added, "Don't forget the part where she says, 'I didn't know I wasn't supposed to.'" More cackling. Sarah screamed, "Oh my God, that's too real!" I sat on my bed, frozen, eyes locked on the door like it might burst open. It felt like high school bullying, except I was an old woman, and it was my own family. My hands clenched so tight, I left little fingernail dents in my palms. Then came the worst part. Emily's voice, giggling. "Should we just make it easy and push her out? I mean, how long are we going to pretend she's not a parasite?" Chloe jumped in. "I say we make her leave on her own. That way, no one has to feel bad. Plant the seeds. Let her do the packing." Sarah finished with a cold laugh. "Oh, honey, the seeds are already planted." I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I just sat in silence, listening to them laugh. I felt like I was shrinking, dissolving into nothing in the same house I once helped pay for when David was 22, broke, and begging for help. They didn't want me gone. They wanted me broken enough to leave myself. The next morning, no one mentioned the party. Not a word. They smiled over coffee. Emily wore sunglasses at breakfast. Chloe was already scrolling her phone when I walked out to get tea. It was all a performance, and I finally understood. This wasn't about what I'd said on that call. That was just the excuse. They'd wanted me gone for a long time. They were just waiting for the right moment to make it look like my fault. The night I left wasn't dramatic. No final scream, no broken plate, no one grabbing my arm and begging me to stay. It was worse, quiet, planned, intentional. Like everyone in that house had silently agreed I didn't belong, and now they were waiting for me to accept it. Sarah made chicken that night, and no one offered me a plate. Emily walked past me like I was a lamp. Chloe sat at the dining table, sipping wine, laughing at a meme on her phone, her legs resting on the chair where I usually sat. I wasn't spoken to. I wasn't acknowledged. The message was clear. You're not welcome here anymore. I ate 2 crackers and half a banana in my room. Lights off, TV on mute, just to hear background noise that didn't sound like them. Around 9, I stepped out to put my mug in the sink. David was on the couch, arms crossed, staring at the TV like it owed him something. I said his name. He didn't turn. "David?" I said again. "Can we talk for a second?" Nothing. Sarah walked out from the laundry room, saw me, and said, "Still here?" No sarcasm, no raised voice, just a cold acknowledgement that I existed, and it annoyed her. Chloe chuckled. Emily came down the stairs in her slippers, saw me, and made a face like she smelled something rotten. "Don't hover," she muttered. That was the moment, not because it was the worst thing said to me that week, but because it was the last layer of pretending. They weren't hiding it anymore. I turned, walked down the hallway, and closed the door behind me without a sound. I took my time packing. I didn't own much. A few changes of clothes, my photo album, my meds, a small envelope of emergency cash hidden inside a pair of socks. I folded everything neatly. I checked the drawers twice. I left the spare key on the desk. I didn't leave a note. They didn't deserve one. I zipped my bag slowly, trying to keep my hands from shaking. It wasn't fear. It was something colder, older, like a loss so deep it didn't need tears. I opened the door and saw Ethan in the hallway. My grandson, 17, the only one who hadn't hurt me. But he hadn't helped either. He stood frozen, holding a water bottle, earbuds dangling around his neck. "I'm leaving," I said quietly. He didn't speak, didn't ask why, just nodded once, like he already knew. I walked past him, bag over my shoulder. The hallway light flickered. Emily's door was open, and I heard laughter from her phone. David never turned from the TV. Sarah didn't come out. Chloe didn't blink. I opened the front door. The air outside hit cold and wet. I had no car, no plan, no place to go. But I stepped out anyway. I didn't slam the door. I didn't say goodbye. And I didn't expect to come back. The place I found in Cedar Grove wasn't much. A single-room studio behind a nail salon with paper-thin walls and a lock that stuck every time I turned the key. But it was mine. And more importantly, it was quiet. I paid the first month in cash and didn't leave my name. The landlord didn't ask questions. The only furniture was a metal frame bed, a nightstand with a sticky drawer, and a chipped dresser that leaned right, like it had given up. I unpacked slowly, placing my clothes in the bottom drawer and my photo album under the bed. I taped a note above the sink. "Breathe. You're not there anymore." I wasn't scared at first, just tired. I made instant oatmeal every morning, watched reruns of game shows on low volume, and listened to neighbors yell about lottery tickets and laundry schedules. It was strange how peace felt like noise when you hadn't had it in so long. For the first few days, my phone was silent, and I was grateful. No texts, no calls, no fake pleasantries from Sarah, no guilt trips from David. I told myself this was what I wanted, what I needed to disappear, to breathe. But silence turns cruel when it lingers too long. By the end of the second week, I found myself glancing at my phone too often, opening the contacts list, hovering over Ethan's name, then closing it. I never messaged him. I didn't want to drag him into anything. He'd stayed out of the mess, or so I thought. The first missed call came on a Sunday morning. I was pouring tea when the screen lit up. David. I stared at it, let it ring, and turned the phone over. 5 minutes later, Sarah, then Emily, all in a row. I didn't answer any of them. An hour passed. Another call, this time from an unknown number. Then 2 voicemails. I didn't check them. Not yet. That night, I turned the phone off and buried it under a towel. The next morning, it was worse. 10 missed calls, 3 voicemails, 2 texts from David. The first said, "We need to talk. It's about Ethan." The second said one word, "Please." That stopped me cold. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in my lap, heart thumping. Whatever was happening, they weren't calling to apologize. They needed something. From me, after everything. I forced myself to listen to one voicemail. It was Emily's voice, different this time. Shaky, high, raw. "Grandma, please. He's missing. Ethan's gone." "We can't find him. Just call back if you hear anything, okay?" My body locked up. I replayed it 3 times. Missing. Gone. My mind raced through every possibility, every dark corner, every street he could be wandering. I hadn't spoken to him, hadn't reached out, hadn't even asked how he was after I left. I turned the phone off again, not out of spite, but because I couldn't breathe. In 1 month, they hadn't cared if I was alive. Now they were flooding my phone, and the only thought I could hold on to was this. Ethan had always been the quiet one, the watcher, the one who didn't yell. If he was gone, something had pushed him there, and I had a terrible feeling I already knew what. I didn't sleep that night, not a minute. I lay on the creaky mattress, phone face down on the nightstand, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that looked like a crooked heart. Every sound outside made me jolt. Footsteps, a car horn, someone slamming a dumpster. And every time, I thought of Ethan, my chest squeezing like I couldn't get air. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned the phone on, and notifications flooded in. 17 missed calls, 3 more voicemails, a handful of texts, all saying the same thing. He's missing. He left a note. We don't know where he is. Please call us. I didn't trust them. Not after everything. But I couldn't ignore it either. I called his school. The secretary transferred me to the counselor, a woman named Miss Carter, who remembered me from a parent-teacher night years ago. She paused when I asked if she'd heard anything about Ethan. Then she said carefully, "He's been having a tough time at home lately. He told me he wished he could live with you." I froze. "Did something happen?" I asked. She lowered her voice. "Last week he got into a fight with his sister. He said she told him he was weak for defending you. Then she kicked him out of her room and told him to go live with his precious grandma if he loved her so much." The words hit like a punch. Heat rose up my neck. "Did he leave school?" "No," she said quickly. "He came the next day, but he was quiet. I told him he could always come to me if something happened. That was the last real conversation we had." I hung up and sat in the middle of the bed, fingers clenched in my lap. They lied to me. All those voicemails, all that panic, they made it sound like he vanished. But the truth was, he was pushed, shoved out emotionally, maybe even physically. They made him feel unsafe and then tried to pin the fallout on me, like I'd abandoned him. My phone rang again. Sarah. I let it ring. Then Chloe. Declined. Then David. I answered that one. "Hello?" I said. A pause. "Mom?" His voice cracked, and for a second, I heard the old version of him, the scared boy who used to call me from gas stations when his car broke down. "What happened?" I asked, calm but cold. "He's gone," David said. "We're doing everything we can. The police said they'll file a report if he doesn't come back tonight. We don't know where he is. He didn't take his phone?" I didn't respond. Not yet. I let the silence hang. "We thought maybe he came to you," he added. "Why would he do that?" I asked. Another pause. "Because you're the only person he still talks about like he trusts." That one landed. I said nothing. I didn't tell him what the counselor said. I didn't tell him I knew Emily pushed him out, or that I could already imagine Chloe whispering he was too soft, too loyal to an old woman they'd decided didn't matter. I said only, "If I hear from him, I'll let you know." Then I hung up. I sat there, gripping the edge of the bed, heart pounding. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a runaway. This was what happens when a kid finally sees the truth, and the people around him don't want him to. And if Ethan showed up at my door, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't sending him back. It was just past noon the next day when I got the call. Unknown number, no voicemail, just one ring that cut off before it finished. I stared at it, then hit redial, expecting silence or a scam message. But someone picked up. "Hello?" A young male voice, uncertain. I didn't recognize it. "This is Ellen," I said cautiously. "I'm trying to reach Ethan." A pause, then a deep breath. "Yeah, hang on." The phone shifted, muffled movement, a door creaked, and then I heard him. "Grandma?" he said, voice small and shaky, like he hadn't spoken in hours. "Ethan," I breathed. "Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm safe," he said quickly. "I'm with Jake. He let me crash at his place. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to go to school today and have them call home." My knees gave out, and I sat on the edge of the bed. "Are you hurt? Do you need anything?" "No," he said. "Just Can I come to you? The question cracked something in me. Of course. Anytime. Right now. He was quiet for a beat, then said, They lied, didn't they? Didn't. They made it sound like I ran away, but they kicked me out. I didn't need to ask what happened. I already knew, but I wanted him to say it, to hear his voice form the truth. What did they say to you? Emily called me a traitor, he said, voice tight, like he was trying not to cry. She said I was pathetic for defending you, said if I loved you so much, I should just go live with you. Then she opened my door and threw my stuff into the hallway. Sarah didn't say anything. Chloe laughed. David told me to let it go and stop being dramatic. I closed my eyes. My hands trembled. You didn't do anything wrong, I said softly. They just didn't like that you saw them for who they really are. He was quiet again, then whispered, I didn't want you to leave. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how. I know, I said. You don't have to explain anything. Can you come get me? He asked. Jake's place is a couple neighborhoods over. I can send you the address. Yes, I said immediately. I'll be there as soon as I can. He texted me the address after we hung up. I grabbed my coat, my bag, and walked out without looking back. The bus ride was slow, every stop testing my nerves. Every loud noise outside made me check my phone to ensure he hadn't changed his mind. When I got there, he was sitting on the front steps, hoodie pulled up, duffel bag at his feet. He stood when he saw me, and for a second, I thought he might fall apart. But he didn't. He hugged me. Not a quick, polite hug, but the kind that says you're the only person who ever made me feel safe. I hugged him back, just as tightly. We didn't talk much on the ride back. He kept his hood up, head down, earbuds in, and I didn't push. When we got to my apartment, he looked around like it was a new world, small but calm, and whispered, This already feels better. I made him tea and let him sit in silence. He didn't ask about the others. He didn't say their names. He unpacked slowly, folded his clothes neatly, and placed his phone face down on the nightstand like he didn't want it to exist. That night, he slept like a stone. No footsteps, no yelling, no locked doors. Just quiet, just peace. And for the first time since I walked out of that house, I didn't feel alone. The knock came 2 days later, sharp and fast, like someone wasn't waiting for an invitation. I knew it was them before I looked through the peephole. Sarah stood on the other side in a beige trench coat, like she was pretending to be someone she wasn't. David was next to her, looking down at his shoes like a teenager caught cheating on a test. I didn't open the door right away. I let them knock again, then again, until I cracked it open and stepped halfway into the frame. We just want to talk, Sarah said quickly, eyes darting past me, checking if Ethan was home. This isn't a fight, David added, still avoiding eye contact. I didn't say anything. I opened the door wider and stepped aside. They walked in like they owned the place, moving to the small kitchen table like it was a conference room. Sarah crossed her legs and smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. We're here because we're worried, she began. About Ethan, about how all this looks. I raised an eyebrow. How it looks to who? She hesitated. The school, the neighbors, child services. He's 17. People are asking questions. I leaned against the counter. And whose idea was it to throw his things into the hallway? That wiped the smile off her face. David shifted in his seat. He was acting out, he muttered. He called us out in front of everyone, said we were abusive. You know how that sounds to people. Sounds like he was telling the truth, I said, still calm. He was scared. You didn't like that. Sarah sat up straighter. You don't know what it's like raising 2 kids, managing bills, dealing with a sister who never leaves, And a mother-in-law you wanted out from day one, I finished for her. Let's not pretend this is about Ethan's well-being. It's about damage control. Her mouth twitched, but she didn't deny it. David finally looked up. Is he okay? He asked. He hasn't answered our calls. He's safe, I said. And no, he doesn't want to go back. He made that very clear. Sarah scoffed. He's a child. He doesn't get to decide everything. He's 17, I said. Old enough to know when he's being manipulated. Old enough to know who shows up when things get bad. She leaned forward. So what? You think you can just keep him? You live in a shoebox? Better a shoebox full of peace than a house full of poison, I said. The silence that followed was thick. They looked at each other, then back at me. So, what do you want? David asked. You're going to keep him just like that? I didn't hesitate. Yes, unless he tells me otherwise. Sarah's voice rose slightly. You don't have custody. You don't have rights. We were trying to make this civil. I walked to the door and opened it. If you were trying to be civil, you wouldn't have waited until your lies started unraveling to show up. Ethan's not your shield. He's not your cleanup crew. He's a kid you broke because he dared to care about someone you decided didn't matter. Neither of them moved. If he wants to talk to you, he'll let you know. Until then, don't come back. They stood slowly. Sarah glared like she wanted to say more, but for once, she didn't. David nodded once, then followed her out. I locked the door behind them. Ethan came out of the bathroom a few minutes later. He didn't ask who it was. He just looked at me and said, Did you tell them? Everything they needed to hear, I replied. He nodded and went back to brushing his teeth. That night, we made grilled cheese and watched a dumb comedy on mute. Neither of us laughed much, but it was quiet. It was ours. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was living in someone else's story. I was finally living mine. The next morning, I made an appointment at the Family Legal Aid Center in Cedar Grove, walked there with my papers in a recycled grocery bag, and sat in a plastic chair for nearly an hour while Ethan stayed home, doing schoolwork at my tiny kitchen table. When they called my name, I met with a woman named Ms. Harper, mid-40s, efficient, no nonsense, who asked questions I'd never been brave enough to answer out loud before. Has he been abandoned, physically harmed, denied access to school or food? I told her everything, carefully, honestly, without drama. I explained how he'd been emotionally targeted, thrown out, how I had voicemails and texts, how a school counselor confirmed he didn't feel safe. I showed her the call logs and Emily's social media post from the night I left, captioned, "We finally pushed the parasite out." Ms. Harper's expression didn't change much, but I saw her take faster notes. "You're not his legal guardian," she said, "but based on what you've shown me, we can file for emergency temporary custody." My stomach fluttered. "Will it work?" "Depends on the judge," she replied, "but it'll force a hearing. And based on this," she tapped the printed messages, "you're on solid ground." I left that office with paperwork in my bag and my back a little straighter. When I got home, Ethan was where I left him, headphones on, a plate of toast beside him. He looked up and smiled. Just a little, just enough. I told him what I'd done, and he nodded, like he already knew I would. "You don't have to fight them," he said. "I'm not going back there." "I'm not fighting them for them," I said. "I'm doing it so no one can take you away from where you're finally safe." The next week moved slowly. I waited for the hearing date, cleaned obsessively, cooked more than we could eat. Ethan started sleeping better. He joked a little more, sat closer, didn't flinch when the neighbors slammed their door too hard. One night, he showed me a drawing he did for art class. Pencil on paper, a small apartment with light coming through a window and 2 chairs at a table. It looked just like my place. I didn't cry, but I kept the drawing under my pillow for days. The hearing wasn't dramatic. No courtroom speeches, no gavel banging. Just a judge, 2 lawyers, and a pile of evidence. David didn't show up. Sarah did, but she barely spoke. Her lawyer tried to claim I manipulated Ethan, but the judge read the texts, the voicemails, the school counselor's letter. He listened. He looked at me, then at Ethan, then at Sarah, and signed the order. Temporary custody granted. I walked out of that courthouse holding Ethan's hand like he was 5 again, not 17. We didn't say anything on the ride home. We didn't need to. When we got inside, I made dinner. Mac and cheese with real butter. Not the powder kind. We ate sitting on the floor because we still didn't have a proper table. And it didn't matter, because that night, I knew no one could take him from me. No one could silence us again. And the family that once used guilt and power to keep me small had just lost the only person who ever saw me clearly. This wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure the cycle stopped with me. It's been 2 months since the court gave me temporary custody. In that time, not one person from that house in Willow Creek has knocked on my door. No calls, no voicemails, no Chloe, no Emily, no Sarah showing up with fake apologies. Even David stayed gone. At first, I thought they were regrouping, planning a legal pushback, but the silence stayed, and I realized why. They didn't lose Ethan by accident. They gave him up the moment he stopped being useful. He wasn't their golden boy anymore, their obedient buffer. He was mine now, not in the way you own someone, but in the way someone chooses to stay by your side when everyone else told them to leave. Our apartment in Cedar Grove is still small, still cheap, still loud from the nail salon downstairs. But now there's art on the wall, Ethan's drawings, grocery lists taped to the fridge, and 2 chairs at the table instead of 1. I make breakfast, and he actually eats it. He does his schoolwork on the couch while I knit, read, or water the fake plant by the window I keep forgetting isn't real. We laugh sometimes, not every day, but enough. Enough to remember what it's like to feel safe in your own space. The other day, Ethan asked if I thought I'd ever go back to the old house, not to live, just to talk. I told him the truth. I didn't leave because they kicked me out, I said. I left because I finally 418 realized they were never going to stop trying to convince me I didn't matter. He didn't say anything, just nodded and passed me the last piece of toast. I don't know what the future looks like. I'm not naive. I know temporary custody is just that, temporary. But for now, he's here with me, choosing this, and I won't let anyone take that from him again. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about the moment I walked out of that house. How cold the air was, how alone I felt, how ashamed I was, like I'd failed somehow. But now I know I didn't fail. I survived. I adapted. I protected the only one who ever saw me. And in doing that, I finally protected myself. They said I destroyed their lives, screamed it like it was gospel. But the truth is, I didn't destroy their lives. I just refused to lie for them. I stopped covering for them. I walked away from the role they cast me in, quiet, small, disposable, and I took their scapegoat with me. Now he's just a boy doing homework in a warm apartment, and I'm just a woman making tea in a quiet room, finally unafraid of her own voice. I didn't destroy their lives. They tried to destroy mine, and they failed.